At the GAIM Hedge Fund Conference here in Boca Raton, Florida, Charlie Friedberg could be one of the most popular people here. He's with Stride Capital. You're a money guy. You are the man who will provide money. You do seed capital, so obviously you're very popular, I'm sure, among some funds starting up. Tell me a little bit about how you go about making your investments. You only make 1 to 3 a year. So you really do some diligence on that.
That's right. We wait for the fat pitches, as Warren Buffett would say. So we are not pressured at all to put capital to work. If we're going to identify a long-term partner, which is our objective, we want to make sure that we've done the appropriate due diligence on that individual or group of individuals if it's a partnership of more than one person.
What do you look for?
Well, we look for a number of things. So the basic criteria are we look for managers who are experienced. So we don't want someone who is just getting into the business or who hasn't managed the strategy for a long period of time prior to us working with them. We prefer managers who don't utilize leverage as a normal course of business, the reasons for which are fairly obvious post-2008. The third thing we look for is individuals who put primarily the majority of their capital alongside their clients. We want them to be economically aligned with their clients and with us. And we prefer managers who operate in the public markets rather than in privates with long lockups and gates and other things that we like to avoid.
So do you find more people than you can fund, or do you find that actually with that criteria you don't have as many options as you think?
We're used to saying no. So we probably see about 10 to 20 managers per week, and we fund 1 to 3 managers a year. So we're very selective in what we do. And as you pointed out, we're very popular now because raising capital is difficult, and we're often that first capital in the door.
Do you think that environment for capital raising is going to change this year?
I don't. The reason I see that, especially when it comes to seeding, in order to really do the seeding job correctly, you need to be longer term capital. And I'm sure you've heard from many people that liquidity is really a premium right now. Now that, on contrary, provides the opportunity for folks like ourselves who are willing to lock up capital for longer periods of time. But really, people are putting a premium on liquidity rather than quality. And until the focus goes back to quality, I don't see a lot of people putting capital out.
Can you give me an example of somebody you backed and why?
Well, the first manager that we backed is a firm called LRV Capital. It's 3 partners from a firm known as Millgate, which was one of the original Tiger Cubs founded back in the early 90s. The reason why we like them really is a number of reasons. The 3 principals were partners at that firm and had been a partner at that firm for many years and had spent a decade managing that exact same strategy. The second reason is we think they're very differentiated not only in their investment approach, but in the mandate. The mandate is global ex-US equity long short. So they do everything in the world, frontier, emerging, and developed, but not in the US. So we don't know of any other firms that do that. And then third, they have a dedicated and known track record for being able to make money on the short side. And it's very few people can do that, not only in the US, but importantly overseas. And so the combination of those 3 things and our comfort in them and our confidence in them made it our first investment.
Hedge fund industry, as you know, underperformed the market overall. Obviously there are exceptions to every rule, but up about 6% was return on average. What's the hedge fund community doing wrong?
Well, I think what the hedge fund community is doing wrong is very similar to what the long-only community was doing for many, many years, which is they're too benchmark sensitive. Very few people are willing to really take independent views, preferring more to invest along with the herd. We prefer to identify people who are really behaviorally wired to be contrarians and to think differently. But the reality is that most people who manage money are very comfortable making the same bet that everyone else is, maybe sizing it a little bit differently. And so as that type of mentality bleeds into the hedge fund space, you can expect more mediocrity.
More mediocrity, will we also have more funds this year in terms of creation?
No question that there are. I think one of the trends in hedge funds is that the consolidation of the financial services industry is creating more and more individuals wanting to go off on their own. So as bureaucracy increases because of the consolidation, there are going to be more and more entrepreneurs looking to go off on their own, and thus the creation of new funds.
How should an investor think like you? Now obviously they're not going to have dozens and dozens of hedge fund managers, but how should an investor think if they have the wherewithal to put some money in hedge funds?
Well, first of all, I want to say there's a lot of different ways to do well over time, and we have a very specific way of doing it. But really what we look for is a couple of things. We look for strategies that we can understand. If someone is trying to explain a strategy to you and you don't understand what it is, that's an immediate thing to avoid. The second is we look for behavioral biases that we think are long-term indicators of future performance. You know, people who are wired to think differently, people who are patient, people who are modest, If you're a partner in providing someone with capital, you should have access to what they're doing. They shouldn't hide what they're doing from you. And then finally, and this is where I think a lot of people fail, is patience. You cannot expect instantaneous performance. You can't expect someone to make money for you tomorrow. Investing is a long-term game. And if you don't have that type of patience and that type of outlook, you're probably just going to be trading in and around and hurting yourself.
What's the most interesting thing you've heard at this conference?
Well, I just got here last night. I think the most interesting thing I've heard is people thinking that more and more investors are going to be allocating capital, but being someone who is on both sides of the table, not only do I see the manager's viewpoint, but the investor's viewpoint, is I don't see that. I think there's a very large mismatch in the expectations of what managers expect to raise and what investors are actually going to put out.
Charlie Friedberg, great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Rhonda Schaffler. This is Reuters.